My hat is like a shark's fin. Deepest blue is my hat is like a shark's fin. Deepest blue is my hat is like a shark's fin. Yeah, blue is my hat is like a shark's fin. Deepest blue is my hat is like a shark's fin. Deepest blue is my hat is like a shark's fin. Deepest blue is my hat is like a shark's fin.
What is up, people? This is the Shark Attack. I am Sean Williams. Got quite a few things to talk about this week. And of course, I don't know about the rest of you, I'm dreading Monday Night Raw after the last 2 weeks, but more on that later. First topic. Becky Lynch and her VIP meet and greet for the Royal Rumble weekend sold out in 90 seconds. 90 seconds. Let me just say this. Becky Lynch is red hot and hands down the most over woman on the roster, whether it's SmackDown or whether it's Raw. But Becky Lynch is red hot and the girl is freaking money. And you know what? Having a triple threat match between Becky, Charlotte, and Asuka is the right call. And it's probably the one way that you can have Becky drop the belt and still look strong. Because you don't have to have her be the one to take the loss to actually to drop the belt. And you know what? And just because Charlotte's in this match doesn't mean that I think Charlotte's going to be the one to win this one. As a matter of fact, I think you ought to have Asuka be the one to take the belt, because what the hell have you done with her since WrestleMania? You haven't done anything with her. And I really don't need to explain Asuka's skills. But here's the reason why I think you need to have Becky Lynch drop the belt. And everybody else is already saying it. Becky drops the belt, wins the Royal Rumble, challenges Ronda. And of course, everyone would say that's depending on if Ronda Rousey is still holding on to the Raw Women's title by WrestleMania. Oh, she will. WWE cannot afford, in terms of the drawing power, they can't afford to not have her hold the belt. So, it's gonna happen. And you know what? We may not have gotten it at Survivor Series, but it could be a blessing in disguise that this could very well end up being what happens at WrestleMania. And you know what? The idea of seeing Becky Lynch win a women's title at WrestleMania, I'm not complaining about that. But, WWE turned her heel at SummerSlam. Didn't work. The fans wouldn't boo her. The fans aren't going to boo her. They will absolutely not boo her. Why? Because they like this woman. Because she's clawed her way up and worked her ass off to get to where she is now. And they respect that. And you know what? All due respect to Charlotte, there's a lot of people that feel like she's been handed everything and gotten more spots than she probably deserved. But Becky is completely different from that. So, right now, and unfortunately, there's been speculation that while Becky Lynch passed the concussion test, she's still got a nasal fracture from that sucker punch by Nia Jax. Well, let's face it. Can we call it anything else other than that? It was a sucker punch, it was a cheap shot, and everything that's gone on that's keeping Becky from competing in the ring is her fault. It's her clumsy ass's fault, and you know what? If this ends up costing a lot more for WWE, for somebody that is completely red hot as Becky Lynch, if I were Nia Jax, I'd start worrying. Because there are some things even her cousin won't save her from. Alright, that being said, people, let's get to the next segment. This is the Feeding Frenzy.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Alright, my Feeding Frenzy topic of the night. The good news. Daniel Bryan's heel turn is working. The bad news, Dean Ambrose's heel turn is not. Regarding Daniel Bryan, Daniel calling the Yes Movement dead was a great start, and the crowd definitely hated him for that. He's coming off all preachy, and you know what? People hate getting preached to, especially wrestling fans. And you know what? That whole segment with The Miz interviewing him, it seems like The Miz is kind of in a transition between being a face and being a heel. Because while he acted like a heel and just played the same kind of mannerisms that he does, he also seemed kind of disturbed by Daniel Bryan's new attitude. Like, he kept pushing about how he told him to win at all costs, and the way Daniel Bryan was acting, his reaction kind of seemed like he had this, I think I created a monster kind of situation. And another thing that kind of added fuel to the fire was Daniel Bryan throwing down the yes plates that were on the title, on the WWE title. That might as well have been a bonfire, and him throwing the plates down was the can of gasoline. But this will work because as good as AJ Styles being the champion is, it's even better when you're seeing him chasing after it. And right now, Daniel Bryan is getting crazy heat. AJ Styles is getting the cheers for people wanting to see him kick Daniel Bryan's ass. So that's a heel turn. That seems to be paying off. And at least WWE is finally putting the spotlight back on Daniel Bryan that he deserves. However, I gotta say this about Dean Ambrose and his heel turn, especially from what we saw this past Monday. I think DC Comics needs to sue somebody for Dean Ambrose looking like Bane from Dark Knight Rises. And Dean acting like this mega germaphobe is making this whole feud between him and Seth Rollins seem like a complete joke. I mean, the people should be wanting to see Seth Rollins not only go after Dean Ambrose, but kick the living crap out of him. And right now it seems like they could care less. I mean, you're having Dean Ambrose go acting like this germ freak, and I'm not even going to go back into his whole cancer remarks about Roman Reigns for that one segment a couple weeks ago, but having him come out with gas masks and, like I said, looking like a failed audition for Bane, it's not going to get this thing over. I was all in favor of Dean Ambrose turning heel and just the way it was executed the first time, but now it's become like the rest of Raw the last 2 weeks. A complete disaster. So, and it's a shame because it's a waste of two great talents, but I don't know how this is going to get Dean over as a heel, and I don't know how this is really going to elevate Seth Rollins, but right now, they need some serious work to do because they should take a look at SmackDown, see what Daniel Bryan is doing, so they can see how a heel turn actually works. And that is the feeding frenzy. Alright, next topic. Everybody's been speculating about women's tag team titles. And maybe there's something to be said for this. Now, don't get me wrong. Those of you that know me know how I feel about too many title belts. I feel like having too many championships is an example of quantity over quality. And it lessens the value of the belts the more you have. But, in this case, not all the women can go for the singles title. So, for those women, this would be a positive. I mean, look at the Riot Squad. I mean, the only one that looks like a good singles contender right now in that group is Ruby Riott. Sarah Logan and Liv Morgan, guarantee you no one really cares. Or no one really buys them as singles. I mean, Sonya Deville could end up on... I'm going from Raw to SmackDown here, but Sonya Deville looks like she could be a good singles competitor if pushed right. But Mandy Rose, I don't know if anyone really sees that just yet. But the only problem is I'm not sure if there's enough women teams on both rosters for both brands to have women's tag titles. With the exception of the Riot Squad and with the exception of the Iconics, and maybe the team of Sasha and Bayley, what else is there? But at the same time, it would give a purpose to those teams, and maybe actually something done that's worthwhile, but I just don't think that you have enough in terms of teams to pull it off. Well, okay, I missed one. Nia Jax, the tall, overgrown klutz that she is, and Tamina, that's another team that could actually work. But I just don't want to see them ruin that if they do tag titles for the women's division. I don't want to see them screw up that tag division like they screwed up the regular tag division. Alright, with that being said, let me get it into the next segment. This is my mic drop of the night.
Let the battle commence!
Now, this mic drop of the night kind of has a mixture of the good and the bad. And that is about Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre splitting up. Look, I have no problem with Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler splitting up. It was going to happen at some point. But here's why I take some issue with it. You had those two fight on Raw when you should have built this to happen at a pay-per-view. And even if you did that, you have the problem that you had Dolph get the drop on Drew, and in the match that you had on Raw, Drew lost. Given, I'm not saying it's going to kill his momentum. I don't think anything can kill his momentum at this point. But you used what should have been an angle as cannon fodder for Drew McIntyre and Finn Balor. Now, normally I would have no problem with the match between Finn Balor and Drew McIntyre, and I would feel like that at least you're doing something with Finn Balor. But you just wasted what would have been a perfectly good angle to be built up towards a pay-per-view match. And for what? To further how crappy Raw has been? Or to try and somehow derail what could be a huge rise for Drew McIntyre? Sorry, WWE, but you need to take a wrench and start reworking that one, because you screwed that one up too. And God help us if this ends up doing some damage for what could be a huge push for Drew McIntyre. But I doubt that's possible, because from what I heard, they have big plans for Drew ever since his match with Kurt Angle. Let's just hope they haven't changed their mind. And that is my mic drop of the night. Alright, with that being said, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bryan H. Waters, and you're listening to The Shark Attack with Sean Williams.
And we're back. And that was, of course, my good friend Bryan H. Waters. Make sure you check out Break It Down with Bryan H. Also check out The Wrestling Realm. Of course, you can find these on Podbean, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, and, of course, on YouTube. And, of course, check out his segment Wrestling for the Culture, which is also on YouTube, which is it's just one of the most sound wrestling minds that I know, and wrestling knowledge personified, him and, of course, my good friend Dwayne Allen. So make sure you guys check that out. Alright, back on track here. Next topic. Conan criticizes the way WWE is booking Bobby Lashley and believes that Bobby Lashley should be groomed to take on Brock Lesnar. Can't say he doesn't have a point. I mean, with the exception of that one match that he had against Roman Reigns, what the heck has Bobby Lashley really accomplished since he came back to WWE? Really hasn't accomplished a damn thing. Now, while adding Lio Rush adds some layers to Bobby Lashley, like I said, his impact since coming back has just taken a nosedive. There's no direction for him right now. Now look, I'm not saying, and a lot of people want to blame adding Lio Rush, but I'm not ready to do that. Lio Rush is does his job as a mouthpiece for Bobby Lashley, because let's face it, the guy is not a talker. But as far as the idea of a match between Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar, WWE should be wanting this match to happen. And they should want this match to happen before Brock Lesnar leaves. And that's not a matter of if, that's a matter of when. We all know that Brock has no, in terms of commitment, I'm not talking contractually, I'm talking about being committed to pro wrestling. He has none. He has no heart or vindication for pro wrestling. He never has. And you know what? Regarding Bobby Lashley, Lashley was a dominant heel in TNA. And so it can be done. It can be done in the WWE, but they just won't do it. Whatever the reason is, they just won't do it. It's like the furthest that they've ever taken Bobby Lashley was the worthless ECW title that they were showboating. We all saw how that ended up. But I want to see some direction for Bobby Lashley, and right now, what they're doing with him, much like everything else on Raw, is not working. Alright, transitioning into the next segment. This is the segment where we ask the question, who writes this crap?
Who's in charge over there? This is aggravating me now. What, I can't count on you people?
You know, I was skeptic about going into this segment, but Raw continues to suck and sinks even lower. This past week, not only were the ratings horrible, but they actually were historically bad. The third hour being the worst viewed out of all three of them, reaching a 2.1 rating. And you want to know why Nitro didn't ever have the NWO have control 100% of the time? The last 2 weeks of Raw are a clear example of why. When there's got to be a balance, and we're not getting that. Instead, you're having the heels run everything and run everybody into the ground. You're basically turning it into the inmates have overrun the asylum. There's a lack of substance on Raw. The matches and the segments feel hollow, pointless, and make absolutely no sense. And you know, you reach the point where you can't even blame Braun not being there, Roman not being there. You can't blame it on those things. Why? It's because of the fact that this is an opportunity you have to actually do something more. To actually start building some stars, creating more stars. But WWE's not doing it. They're wasting the talent that they have. They're wasting everybody. And it's just insulting everybody's intelligence. Hell, you think I'm being brutal about this? Taz on his show has been completely merciless, although, while completely merciless and brutal, it's not like he's saying anything that isn't true. But it's like WWE is not even trying. I mean, it's like having guys like Braun or Roman not there, and a lazy Brock Lesnar who shows up only when he feels like it. It's like they're using that as an excuse to just be lazy and suck out loud. But you just can't do that. You have to have some kind of effort. I mean, you talk about this as the Flagship show. Well, right now, it looks like that Flagship hit an iceberg and is going down faster than the Titanic did. I'm actually dreading the idea of Raw tomorrow night. Because right now, it's looking like it's looking like the last years of Nitro when it went 3 hours. A complete disaster where they tried to do too much and ended up sacrificing quality for quantity. And that blew up in their face eventually. So, at this point, I don't know what the heck WWE does to fix Raw. Rumor is that Vince heavily rewrote last week's Raw to try and make the fans happy. Well, guess what, Vince? You failed. The ratings are in the tank. And if you're looking for social media reaction, social media has been dumping all over it. And don't expect to be... If you're going to do anything different with tomorrow night's Raw, you better do a whole overhaul. because Corbin's got to go because he's killing your product, and having the heels run everything just makes the show worse. And that's why I ask, who writes this crap? Alright, so a couple other topics I wanted to talk about. So, Matt Riddle continues to shine in NXT. We also saw Punishment Martinez make his debut. Which, you know what? I'm happy for Punishment Martinez. I mean, he said as far as how he felt debuting on NXT, he was shaking all over. Hey, live it up because you earned it. As far as Matt Riddle, look, set aside the fact that I still think eventually WWE is going to slap the boots on this guy. You know what? The whole bro thing is over. The guy, from what I hear, he's learning as quickly as Kurt Angle did when he entered WWE. And you know what? Maybe I'm being optimistic, but I think it's going to work for him. I'm just hoping if they do another match with him and Cassius Ohno, don't give us another match that's going to be a split, like a blink and it's over kind of match. And speaking of NXT, we saw Keith Lee and Lars Sullivan collide like two freight trains running into each other. And you know what? It's possible. It might be the best match that I've seen involving Lars Sullivan. I mean, given he still won the match, but you know what? The loss doesn't hurt Keith Lee, and you know, like I said, it was a good match, but I'm still just not sold on what WWE could possibly do with Lars Sullivan on the main roster. I just feel like he's going to be another guy like that they brought up from NXT that ended up being a bust. And lastly about NXT is it was announced that at TakeOver Phoenix, Tommaso Ciampa will defend the NXT title against the former champion, Aleister Black. Some people think it's probably going to be Aleister Black's swan song before he moves up to the main roster. I'm just really skeptic of the idea of having him on the main roster because I feel like WWE is going to mess him up. But I've been wrong before, and Royal Rumble is coming up, so be curious to see what unfolds for that one. I mean, it's always been a good time to debut new talent. I'm just hoping this doesn't blow up in WWE's face, because I feel like Aleister Black is too good a talent to let go to waste. But anyway, that's going to do things for tonight. I want to thank you guys for listening. Make sure you follow my Facebook group, The Shark Attack. Of course, check this show out on Podbean and on iTunes and on YouTube. Until next time, this has been The Shark Attack. I am Sean Williams, and I'm out of here.
He was born perfect, and just like the great white shark, the sky has never had to